To those of you who are fans of abstract expressionism, there's no one more powerful as an artist than Jackson Pollock. He's known for his gestural abstraction, which he develops in the 1940s, mid-1940s. As a picture of Pollock in the upper left-hand corner, he is transposed on top of figure 31-6, which is number 1, also known as Lavender Mist, which is located in the National Gallery in Washington, D.C., so you can actually see this. It was done in 1950. The photo of Pollock shows him working, and it's one of the famous shots of Pollock using his full arm, not his hand. He's not working from the wrist, the way artists have traditionally done. His paintings are large in scale, so he's working them on the floor, and he works them from all sides, actually stepping onto the surface of the canvas. He drips, he pours, he splatters, he flings. He's using a brush, he's using a stick. He's becoming immersed in the painting. The painting itself is going to spontaneously unfold. He's going to build on what he puts down. It's going to change, it's going to develop as it goes forward. And in that sense, it's going to be spontaneously unfolding, changing, growing, developing, and it suggests a connection with random chance that develops out of surrealism and delving into the subconscious. What Pollock is going to give us will be webs of paint, lines, or if you want to think about it, interlaced layers of paint, one built on top of another. He is doing it in such a way that it actually stresses the process of creation or the creative process itself. Gardner talks about Pollock being, quote, in the painting. By that, in part, I think he means anything that Pollock does while he's creating the painting, in addition to stepping on it, where he quite literally does become a part of the picture. But anything that he does as he engages with the painting becomes a permanent part of the record of the art. That includes Pollock sweating on the picture, dropping cigarette butts on the painting, dropping his ashes on the painting, or the paint caps that he might use if he's squeezing out of tubes, or perhaps nails on the surface of the painting. It is the act of painting itself that becomes prime for Jackson Pollock as he engages in his action paintings. He becomes associated with the art itself, and this adds to the concept of the heroic nature of artists as they create. And in specific for Jackson Pollock and for some of the other abstract expressionists, it contributes to the myth of the tormented artist. I say that because Jackson Pollock, probably some of you already know, was a turbulent person. He was not the world's nicest person. He was an alcoholic, and he was a bad drunk. That means that he would become angry and abusive when he drank. At the end of his career and life, which coincides, he is going to die drunk out of his mind in a car crash. He is going to take another person with him in that car crash. He was an individual who did have some mental issues, and these issues were being treated by a therapist, as I said earlier, a Jungian therapist. It's therefore very easy for us to associate Pollock's personal turbulence with the paintings that he's creating. And love them or hate them, they do convey a turbulent kind of inner energy and tension that is characteristic of Pollock. This is another example and another photograph of Jackson Pollock working. This is his number 5, and I like it because it's easy, I think, perhaps easier than the last one, to see the differentiation in the colors between the webs of paint, and you can also see the way in which they tend to fight with one another as he layers them, creating a kind of dense mesh of an interlocking web of paint on the surface. And last, I have a couple of paintings fairly recently sold at auction to let you know that definitely de Kooning and Pollock have arrived in terms of the world of art and museums. The de Kooning picture, which is located on the left, which was painted in the peak of de Kooning's career in 1955, is titled Interchange, and it sold for around $300 million. The Pollock, which is located on the right, which was also done about the peak of Pollock's career, his output in the late 40s, is titled only 17A. That one sold for $200 million. The kind of interesting thing about it is that they were purchased the same day by the same collector, someone who is quite capable of dropping $500 million to acquire two rather prominent and important works of abstract expressionist painting. It is, in fact, in the world of modern art that the art market has increasingly continued to accelerate in terms of demand and also in terms of prices. In the next talkie, I'm going to be referencing three major movements that are reactions to abstract expressionism. One of them is going to be post-painterly abstraction, and a subcategory of that, the way Gardner's defining it, is color field painting. Color field painting refers to paintings that are done by artists who provide us with broad areas of color and focus on color as one of the main areas of interest in their work. Helen Frankenthaler would certainly qualify for that. Post-painterly abstractionists are interested in continuing abstraction that did appear in the work of the abstract expressionists, but without the strong emotions of the artist being visible. For Frankenthaler, her work does not necessarily depict her moods, but it does reflect her experimentation in color and in technique. She is shown in the top right as a mature artist who continues working throughout her lifetime. In the lower right, what we're looking at is Helen Frankenthaler with her individual technique, not of dripping paint, but of pouring it. What she tends to do in her career is to spill, I'm going to say gently, onto the canvas from a can, paint that then is allowed to wash over the canvas in a thin web. She becomes a transitional figure developing out of abstract expressionism. She was heavily influenced by Jackson Pollock and by his use of raw canvas, untreated canvas, which would accept paint on the surface of it. But for Frankenthaler, what she wanted was light veils of color that could float on the surface. The end product that she creates usually suggests something in nature, often a landscape, and that's going to be true of what we have in our textbook. On the lower left, figure 3114, it's called The Bay, and yes, once you have the title, it can look like an abstraction in nature, a body of water, and perhaps the landscape surrounding it in green. She is also an artist who's interesting because she worked in printmaking as well, woodcuts, lithos, aquatints, for those of you who might be interested in prints or who might actually do prints. Her images were produced on untreated canvas so that the paint could literally stain the canvas and soak into it, creating very flat images and eliminating a sense of foreground and background. These paintings, to me, seem to suggest memory landscapes. They're almost dreamlike. The mood of them is lyrical, it's very gentle, and it's in very strong contrast to the works of the abstract expressionists. They the works of Frankenthaler seem to expand outward, almost as if they're still spilling, as if the wash could keep going. And her work actually does appear on the surface of it to be accidental. Abstract expressionists claim to be working their pictures as they go along, therefore working automatically and to some extent accidentally, but their paintings don't necessarily look that way. Frankenthaler's do. It actually looks like the paint has spilled and has picked its own pathway on the surface of the canvas. She also clearly eliminates brushwork and the hand of the artist, which is very, very much associated with abstract expressionism. She gives us delicate pictures, often pastel colors, and the colors themselves seem to be strangely, almost mystically luminous, as if they are radiating light. If you had to pick a gender, I guess I would go with Frankenthaler creating works of art that tend toward the feminine. Well, the abstract expressionists, think Pollock, think de Kooning, are leaning towards more assertive, aggressive, masculine natures and styles. These are a couple more examples to look at. Mountains and Sea, 1952 by Frankenthaler, is one of her pivotal works. She, generally speaking, gives us images that open up, give us more room to breathe, and are much freer in terms of the space around them and in the sense of movement of the color areas within. These are also simply lighter in mood. They look very fresh. They look very direct. She is going to change from oil, and the reason I included the work lower right is to show you an unstained canvas. She's experimenting with oil on it, and we're getting halos around the oil paint. So she changes over to acrylic. It eliminates the halos of oil seeping into the canvas, but what she discovered was acrylic actually gives her a more direct and a more resonant application of color to the raw canvas that she is using. These images almost seem organic and reference nature without actually defining it. They also overall very clearly reject the personal hand of the artist and the passionate feelings of the artist, which is going to be a part of the reaction to abstract expressionism.